Welcome to the Industry Show. I'm your host, Nitin Bajaj, and joining me today is Sue Ann Gonis. Sue, welcome on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Oh, you're most welcome, and the pleasure is all ours. So, let's start with who is Sue?
Sue is a girl that grew up in a small town in Oregon, a small town of 1,500 people. And as a child who dreamed of moving to the big city. And at that time, the big city that I dreamed of moving to was Seattle, which I ended up doing when I was 20 years old. So I did follow my dream, but I wanted to live somewhere where there were more opportunities. I wanted to take dance classes. I wanted to go to the theater, all the things you don't get to do in a small town. I wanted to go to university. I also I had this small town in me too, though, but I loved gatherings and family and all that. But yes, I always dreamed of going to the city. And here I am in Orange County. I guess that's true. I pretty much have lived in big cities most of my life now.
That's awesome. And I'm sure there was a lot of adventure and in that journey going from that small town to coming here to Orange County. Let's talk about that through, the what do you do for a living now?
Okay, well, what I do for a living now is I'm an executive coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I coach executives, mid to executive leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And I coach, not only coach people on how to be better leaders, but I coach the whole person, whatever is going on in their lives.
And how did you get here? Is this, I kind of know a bit of how you got here, but I would love for you to share that with our audience. It wasn't a straight line.
No, it wasn't a straight line. I mean, if you would have asked me when I was 20 years old, what are you going to be when you're 50 years old? I would not have said an executive coach, because at that time, executive coaching didn't even exist.
Right.
So I had no idea. And I always find that funny when people ask young children, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, how do they know what they want to be when they grow up? They haven't experienced life. They haven't experienced who they are. There's just so much there. But anyway, some people do know. I guess they're born knowing they want to be a doctor or they want to be an artist or whatever it is. But that wasn't my case. My case was, well, first of all, I'll say I've been a W-2 employee since I've been 16 years old, with the exception of when I was in my 20s, I did start a business.
Mm-hmm.
And that business supported our family. We had 2 children, supported our family, and also put my husband through law school. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that in my 20s, I was able to start a business that was that successful. And I actually ended up selling that business because I moved with my husband. My husband was transferred from Washington State to Wisconsin. And so I moved with him. And in his job, we knew that we were only going to be in Wisconsin for a couple of years. So to restart a business, it just didn't make sense to do. And I was still brokenhearted from the fact that I had to leave my past business. Mm-hmm. So I went back to work in corporate America at that time. And that was the insurance industry. Mm-hmm. And what happened there is I was offered a transfer after 2 years. I was offered a transfer to Tustin, California office. Mm-hmm. And so I went home to my husband and I said, here it is, December. Actually, it was December 28th. It was on your birthday. But anyways, on December 28th, I said, we're being offered to move to California. And we both looked at one another and said, absolutely, let's do it. Because the weather that day was 48 degrees below zero wind
Oh
chill
my
factor in Wisconsin. So the thought of California and the palm trees and the beach, that really sounded fabulous. Plus, I was really excited about the job opportunity.
God.
So we packed up our car and we drove across country.
Wow.
And we drove and stopped off and attended a wedding on the way in Arizona and got here sometime around the first part of the year. And I've been here ever since. But career-wise, what happened in the insurance industry is I continued to progress and eventually progressed to president of operations. And during that time, I also had gone back to school to earn my college degree. So I didn't even have my college degree when we first came to California, but that was something I always wanted to do. So I worked full time, got my college degree, and then I hit this. Our company was actually sold at the time, and I was forced to lay off people. I had to rate people from 1 to 4 and lay off 25% of people at the time over a 6-month period.
Wow.
And that was pretty devastating to have to do that. And it's the first time I'd ever been in a situation like that. And that's when I brought in a couple of career coaches. And then I started working with the people as well and helping them prepare for interviews, helping them prepare their resumes. I gave them time off to find work because the goal was the president and I had decided that, or the CEO of the company and I had decided that we wanted to make sure every single person would be employed before they left.
Nice.
And we actually accomplished that with the exception of one person that had special needs. And he was the only person that wasn't employed at the end of the 6 months. So that was my first really try, I guess, at coaching. And that was just coming from my heart and really wanted to help these people. But also, I took a look at my life and what I wanted to do career-wise, and I decided that I wanted to go into high tech. This is when tech was really booming and there were a lot of .coms that were being started and that. And so I focused on one company, which I wouldn't advise people to do, to only focus on one company, but I did. One company, I want a job at this company. I don't care if it's sweeping floors, I'm going to go to work for this company. And so I got a job at the company. I took a couple steps back, which is common when you're doing a functional and an industry change. And that was fine with me. I went in as a senior manager of customer service. It's a 500-person customer service. We handled 80,000 SKUs at that time.
Wow.
There were a lot of acronyms. That was the big thing I remember is, oh my God, I've never seen so many acronyms in my life. And that was the biggest challenge, was learning the acronyms. But anyways, that went really well. Loved the people. And after 6 months, I was promoted then into sales operations. And then eventually I went into strategic accounts where I was leading strategic accounts, and they were the billion-dollar accounts. And was really, really happy with my career. But we got a new CEO, and this CEO absolutely was the most amazing leader I'd ever worked for. He really validated for me what I thought great leadership was. He validated that. And at that time, right after he had started, my direct reports had gotten together and they created an award that was called the People's Choice for Best Leader, and they awarded it to me.
Wow.
And you can only imagine that was one of the just a amazing thing to receive from your direct reports.
Yep.
And our CEO was there when this took place. And he called me into his office and he said, it's obvious, and I've heard from numerous people, that not only are you a great leader, but you get really good results. So the two go hand in hand, right? When you create a trusting environment where you care about your grow and you're lining people with their strengths and all of that. I mean, if I would lead a worldwide culture change in 32 countries for the company. We were a Fortune 46 company at the time. And I said, absolutely. Wow. I would love to do this. And actually, at the time, I didn't even really know what all that was going to mean, but I knew that I really admired him as a leader, and that I knew that he would show me that I could count on him to be there for me. Right. And so that was one of the most exciting things I ever got to do. I got to work with leaders from all over the world and all different cultures. And what I discovered at this time was that it is lonely at the top for leaders, and that they needed someone that they could talk to, someone that would listen, someone that would help them overcome their self-limiting beliefs, see a new perspective, really figure out who they wanted to be as a leader, what their purpose was. That was something they were really yearning for, because at that time, people weren't given executive coaches. Still, keep in mind, I'm doing this work, and now we call it executive coaching. Right. But I loved the work. And so everything was going great until our CEO said, I'm going to leave. And this was after 4 years, and I'm going to go to another company. And I was like, oh, I loved working with him, and I looked up to him so much. I thought, okay, these things happen. So they brought in another CEO, and this CEO wanted to do things the opposite of the current CEO. So I thought, well, maybe there's a message here for me. So I'd been with the company for 7 years, and I was also going through a divorce. And I was feeling like this was time for a change for me. I took a hard look at my life. I knew I needed to be available for my children more. And so I decided, I took a walk on the beach in my head, but really looked at where my strengths were, what fulfilled me, what I was passionate about. And I knew it had something to do with leadership and working with leaders and working with executives. But I still hadn't figured out exactly what it was. But I also knew I wanted to go back to school and get my master's degree, because I felt like I had the art of leadership down, but I really wanted to learn more about the science of leadership. What really creates the motivation? What's happening in the brain when somebody is inspired or not inspired? What's going on with that? And so I took a position, another career change, and this was a major. So notice I went from insurance industry to high tech. Now I decided I wanted to go into academia. And so I went to work at Chapman University for the Ardress School of Business, and went back to school. And while I was working there full time, I earned my master's degree. And then eventually what I did is I figured out I wanted to become an executive coach. And so I went back to school again, more certifications, and started my own coaching practice. And that was 2008. I've continued to go to school. I'm always going to school. And I've earned my master coaching certification through the International Coach Federation, which is considered the gold standard of coaching. And so, yeah, absolutely. I found what I really, really love. Yeah.
That is awesome. So
It
who
was
is,
a journey.
it is, right? And we, as entrepreneurs, we realize that it's not never a straight line, right? It's a series of ups and downs,
No.
and it's the downs is when we do a lot of learning, a lot of self-reflection that really helps us when the things start to pick back up again. In doing what you do now with your coaching and consulting practice, who is your ideal customer?
My ideal customer is someone that's really motivated for change.
Hmm.
I always say they meet me. I heard this quote from actually one of my peers said, I need them to meet me at the 50-yard line. And that is so true.
Yeah.
I need them to meet me at the 50-yard line.
Hmm.
They really want this. They want something more in their life,
Yep.
whatever that is. That's my ideal client,
Hmm.
that they're ready to go and they're open-minded.
And as you work in this, you know, I would imagine the intersection of ambition and, whatever may be going on at their personal level, but also at their professional level. What is maybe one of the biggest challenges you face?
Um, with clients is with the clients or with myself.
Well, yeah, mostly with your clients, right? As you're kind of doing this work that intersects with their own passions and emotions and what may be going on in their environment, the close or even their macro environment, there may be things that they are in control of and they are not in control of. And then from your perspective, as you're trying to drive this change and help them, there are a lot of dynamics, right? Like you mentioned, they need to meet you somewhere. They may think they're ready, but they may not be,
Mhm.
right? So there are some, I'm sure there is a lot of
Yeah.
dynamics going on over there, and one challenge may stand out more than others.
Well, I try to meet the client where they're at.
Okay.
So when I say they're meeting me part way, that means that they're ready and they're open
Right.
and they want to make change. But the way they go about that change may be different than the way I would go about the
Mm-hmm.
change or you would go about that change.
Right.
And I really try to understand and meet the client where they're at
Mm-hmm.
and gain. And I know that they understand their situation by far better than I would ever understand their situation.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes just really exploring that.
Right.
It's not only their situation, but exploring their beliefs about it,
Mm-hmm.
their self-limiting beliefs about it. Where do those come from?
Right.
And how are all these beliefs leading them to create the life that they have?
Mm-hmm.
And if they want to change that life, you have to go deep
Mm-hmm.
and look at what you want to keep and what you want to replace.
Yes.
I mean, people are complicated, right? We're all
Mm-hmm.
very complicated. It's not simple.
Right.
And so I just become really curious with the client and never tell them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I might say something like, what's stopping you from? If
Mm-hmm.
something is so obvious,
Mm-hmm.
what's stopping you from leaving this situation and finding a new situation?
Mm-hmm.
So I become really curious versus saying, you need to leave this situation, go to another. I never say that because I know that there's things stopping them.
Mm-hmm.
And we figure out, what do they have to give up? Because there's something that they feel like they have to give up to do it. And what are they gaining? Or what is it costing them to stay where they're at?
Mm-hmm.
Also, how is it serving them to stay where they're at? So we do a lot of exploring around that, and they start to understand. I call it their operating system.
Mm-hmm.
How do they operate in this world? What are their patterns? And, after a while, you start to see the pattern, the thought patterns. And then looking at new perspectives and asking them, what would open up for you if you were to adopt this new perspective here?
Mm-hmm.
And through that, there's a lot of ahas, a lot of discovery, but it's never my agenda for their life.
Mm-hmm.
Always what they want, not what I want for them. Sometimes, we're thinking, why can't they move faster or whatever? I try not to go there. That's not me. I'm not them.
Right.
I try to, they have to move at their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're making progress. If they get stuck, then that could be another type of situation.
Right. That discovery process is a lot of work, but then when you have those aha moments, right, they're all so worth it.
So amazing.
Yeah.
So amazing. And I so often find I'll do a check-in and I'll ask them towards the end of the coaching session,
Mm-hmm.
what are you learning about yourself? Because there's been some obvious learning,
Mm-hmm.
in the session. And I get surprised all the time by the obvious things, the things that they can add to that they're learning,
Mm-hmm.
that I had no idea they were learning until I asked them that question. So that gives them time to really reflect. Wow, I just learned this. And it's always phenomenal. I mean, I could never guess it myself what it could be that they're learning. It's always a surprise. I love that moment
Mm-hmm.
when they share what they're learning. Yeah.
As you think about these different experiences and as you think about the business uh, that you have, what is maybe the biggest opportunity that uh, you're targeting right now?
I would say the biggest opportunity is to make sure that I'm aligned with the client that really is ready
Mm-hmm.
to make the change. Sometimes they may discover, even in the coaching, I'm not ready right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready to make the change. I'm not ready to look at this. I don't want to look inside. I don't want to reflect. I don't want to discover or whatever. And sometimes that happens. But I would say that's the biggest opportunity, is to find the clients. Although I like the challenge.
Right.
I like the challenge. I get surprised all the time when I start with a client and they're not ready yet, but they get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's also exciting. So I have to say I'm pretty happy with where I'm at right now. I mean, there's always things, but I really, really love the people I work with right now.
That's a great place to be in. So when you look back and think about uh, a success story or a lesson learned that you're either really proud of or that really stands out for you, which one would that be?
There's been so many lessons. I mean, I feel like there's no such thing as a free lunch. So I really like that quote. There's no such thing as free lunch.
Yeah.
If it's really easy, then there's something
Right.
not right, because everything takes work and effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I'm a huge believer in working smart
Mm-hmm.
and working hard and forgiving others. That none of us are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we need to forgive. And we need to forgive ourselves, learn and grow from our mistakes, but forgive ourselves and forgive others.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just some of them that come to mind. I'm also a huge believer in being able to be independent
Mm-hmm.
and able to take care of yourself so that you can choose to be in the relationships you're in rather than you need to be in the relationships you're in. A huge believer in that too.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I would say around career,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that it takes a while for us to evolve
Yep.
and really figure out who we are and to really align ourselves with who that is,
Mm-hmm.
our strengths and what really fulfills us. But I'm a huge believer you can get there because I've gotten there and it is incredible. And I want everybody to get there, no matter what that is, to, figure that out. And if you don't know it at 20, that's okay, because you have to experience a lot of life yet.
Yes.
But as you're experiencing life, take those moments to self-reflect
Mm-hmm.
and really think about what really lights me up, what fulfills me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will also add to that, you have to figure out what that is, because I have a lot of interests. There's a lot of things I love. I love fitness. I love to be creative. I love to sew and make jewelry, and I like to cook, and I like to decorate and gardens, dance, and play the guitar. So, I mean, there's so many things I love, but I wouldn't want to do those things full time.
Right.
Those are truly my hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my escape. That's my therapy. So I need those things for that. And if I were told you need to now make a living making clothes, I would not be happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to replicate 1,000 or 2,000 dresses. I love the creative process of making one and then going on to another.
Mm-hmm.
So that would never work. So in figuring out what that is, you have to figure out what that thing is, that are those things are that you could do several hours a week for many years. And then maybe it'll change and maybe it's something else, and that's okay too. You don't have to do it for the rest of your life. Totally up to you.
Mm-hmm.
We're so lucky to have so many options where we live, in the US.
True.
We have so many options.
So true. Sue, I know you're very modest and very down to earth, but I do want people to hear this story of grit and resilience that, I mean, you had to fight your way to move careers to, you talked about leading your family when you were in your 20s, and but then there were other instances. I was amazed when you told me about this interview process where you showed up. Just briefly, if you will, tell us about that experience and what you were feeling as you were going through that process.
Oh, that was when I went into the tech industry.
Mhm.
So that interview process.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I was leaving knew I was leaving the insurance industry, and I wanted to go to work for this one company that I had my heart and my soul set on. I sent in my resume, and my resume didn't speak their language. Remember, I said all those acronyms and all that. I was president of operations, but that didn't speak the language of high tech. And so I didn't hear anything. Even though I really, really wanted them, they didn't really, really want me at that time because they didn't know me. They couldn't figure out how my experience was relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also said earlier, I wanted a job there really bad and I was willing to sweep floors. So
Mm.
I kind of have that attitude. I will roll up my sleeves
Yeah.
and I will do whatever I have to do. So what I did is at that time, they put job ads in the paper. And there was a full page ad that said career fair for salespeople at Ingram Micro, minimum wage plus commission. And so I thought, well, that may be my way to speak to HR. I'm going to go to that career fair and hopefully I'll get the attention of HR and be able to show them my resume. So I wasn't interested in the sales job, but I was interested in a manager job. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I put on my suit and I had my briefcase and I drove to the event, parked my car, and there must have been 2,000 people there. Wow. I had never seen so many people. And I wanted to turn around. I mean, as I was walking, mm-hmm. I started to turn around. And then I caught myself and I said, I'm here, so I might as well stay. Yeah. So I literally sat in this big room. They had several HR people interviewing. Everybody got 5 minutes with HR. So they had all these tables with a chair on the other side of the HR person. And after like 2 hours, I was called up. So all during that 2 hours, I kept thinking about leaving. Oh my gosh, it's now been 2 hours. I think I'll not, no, stay. So I went up to the HR person. I'll never forget. Her name was Pat Smith. Mm-hmm. And she looked at my resume and she said, what are you doing here for this career fair? And she said, you look overqualified. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm here because I want to talk to you. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm here. And I quickly gave her my like 1 to 2 minute commercial about who I was mm-hmm. and why I wanted to work for this company, because I had a total of 5 minutes, right? That was it. And she said, I believe we have a great job for you. So we will call you in a week. So I went home scared to death that that would never happen, that she wouldn't remember because she had interviewed so many people. Yeah. But I received the call. And then I went through the interview process and I was hired. And I mean, really, that was such an incredible company to work for. And I gained so much experience and found myself in so many ways at that company and who I really was. So I will forever be grateful for what they did for me. But not only that, the fact that I hung in there. And even though there was this voice in my head saying, this is ridiculous, why are you doing this? It's not going to work. So I guess that would be one lesson learned. Mm-hmm. It may seem silly, it may seem crazy, but get creative. Mm-hmm. If you want to go to work for a company, figure out how can you connect inside that company and do it. Don't talk yourself out of it. And the other thing that I'll say, because you brought up, it hasn't always been easy. When I said I've been a W-2 employee since the age of 16, I mean, I worked at least 30 to 35 hours a week mm-hmm. from 16 on. And that means I wasn't a cheerleader. There were a lot of things that I had to give up that girls my age at that time got to enjoy. Right. But I loved working. Number one, I loved the independence and the paycheck, but I also needed to work because we had very little resources. And I said that I went to college later. That's very true, because college, not that my grades weren't there, but when I brought college up to my stepdad, when I was 17 years old, he said, well, that's ridiculous. That's a waste of money because you're just going to get married and have children. So that was how I was raised. My stepfather was blue collar. They were not educated at the time. Now I will say later, my mom went to college. They did divorce. And my mom went to college, and I'm so proud of her for that. But, and not that she didn't believe in education, but that was just not available to me. So I always wanted to go to college. And so that meant I figured out a way to do it. Worked full time, had 2 young children. I went to college. So that was another lesson learned. If you really want to do it, then you have to make it happen. And you know what? You can do so much more than you ever thought you could do. That's really true. We just don't even tap into our full selves, I don't think. Do you? Do you think that we fully ever tap into what we're capable of?
No, unless, what I have noticed about myself is the moments when I have been extremely challenged is when I have come out to experience and explore a part of me that I did not know existed.
Mm,
When I moved to the US, I was extremely challenged to be so resourceful because I was
yeah.
in a new country. I did not have the comforts that I had back home, and I had to get creative. I had to think beyond what I was used to uh, within moments or seconds. And those were some of my most creative and some of my most, I would say, satisfying moments. So I think we we tend to, because we tend to operate from our fight or flight brains, we tend to seek comfort. But
Yes.
it's really when we are in those uncomfortable situations is where we draw upon and kind of reach into those deeper areas that we have but we never tend to use. It's kind of like those muscles, right? Unless you do something strenuous, you don't even realize you have those muscles in your
Yeah.
body.
Right. I know that is. That's so true. And now they say we are meant to survive. We are made to survive, right? We figure it out. We can do it. We
Hmm.
figure out how do we do this?
Yeah.
I think it's so true. I mean, I'm really proud of, when I look back on the hard times and when it wasn't easy, but all the things that I learned about myself during that time and how creative I became and innovative during those times. Yeah, it's great what that gives us.
So it's, like I said, you're too modest to say this, but I will, because yours is such a beautiful story of so many different attributes and values that, the success was bound to come, right? The grit, the resilience, the patience, the passion, the tenacity to be there, but at the same time, you're so gracious. Life has dealt you so many challenges, and you have come out ahead of them every single one of those times. So kudos to you, to your hard work, and to your resilience. And thank you for being with us here today. We really appreciate you sharing your journey and your story and inspiring a lot of people out there that need this, that courage, that inspiration, and that motivation that when hard time comes, don't give up, right? Just keep at it. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And same to you. You've done the same thing.
Nothing
And,
compares to what
you
you
know,
have done.
oh, no. I mean, coming to this country, I just can't even imagine how difficult that would be to do that. And I admire you just greatly for that. And anybody else who has done that to start all over.
Yeah.
Basically, you start from nothing, right?
Mhm.
You start from nothing
Yeah.
and you build it. It's just amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.